My name is Veronica Miles, and I spent 30 years on the bench deciding what justice should look like. I never imagined the night I needed it most would be in my own dining room. The glass hit my temple with a sharp crack, bright pain blooming as red wine ran down my cheek. Across the table, Sloan Parker, my daughter-in-law, stood frozen, arms still extended, breathing hard. Evan, my son, made a strangled sound I hadn't heard since he was a boy. For a second, the chandelier hummed and the room held its breath. The prime rib I'd roasted all afternoon sat untouched. The crystal my mother set, the one I polished every Thanksgiving, caught the light like it was mocking me. Sloan blinked, defiant rather than sorry. "When I ask for more wine, you pour," she said, voice slurred but blade sharp. Years in court pinned my temper to the floor. "You've had enough," I said evenly, "and this is my home." She laughed small, bitter, practiced. Evan reached for her wrist. "Sloan, please." She shook him off, eyes never leaving mine. I stood, pressing a linen napkin to my temple. The skin had split. Head wounds always look worse than they are. I didn't shout, I didn't threaten. I did what I have always done when truth is contested. I preserved it. Phone out. Photo of the cut. Photo of the wine bleeding into my blouse. Photo of the shattered stemware on the oak floor. I swept the shards into a freezer bag and sealed it. Evidence doesn't argue. It simply sits there and waits. "Mom," Evan whispered, horror in his voice. "It was an accident." "Accidents don't start with orders," I said. "They end with apologies." Sloan's smile didn't touch her eyes. "You're not on the bench anymore, Veronica. No one has to obey you." "No," I said, "but they do have to stop when I say stop in my house." It should have been a quiet Friday dinner. Evan's stories from the clinic, a new book, one meant to ask him about a dessert chilling in the fridge. Instead, 3 bottles into the evening we were here, at the place people pretend they never arrive by choice. I crossed to the powder room and rinsed the wound until the water ran clear and cold. The mirror gave me back a stranger, silver hair damp at the temples, jaw set, eyes bright with something I refused to call fear. On the shelf above the sink, past case files I'd brought home years ago stared like stern witnesses. I dabbed the cut with antiseptic and breathed. When I came out, Sloan had her purse in her hand and the same smirk on her mouth. "Pour your own wine next time," she said, brushing past me. Evan hovered in the doorway between us, torn clean down the middle. I didn't try to stop her. I didn't try to mend what couldn't be mended in a single night. I walked to my desk in the study, a walnut slab scarred by decades of drafts, appeals, and dissents, and opened a new folder on my laptop. K. Sloan. I typed the date and the words, "assault with injury," because naming a thing pulls it into the light. Then I picked up the phone and dialed. The dispatcher's voice was steady, trained for storms. I matched it with my own. "I'd like to report an assault in my home." After I hung up, I turned off the oven I'd forgotten was still warm, wrapped the untouched roast, and slid it into the fridge. Domestic order is a language abusers don't speak. It's also how survivors breathe. In the quiet, the house made its old wooden noises, settling, remembering. I switched off the chandelier and let the room go dim. Outside, a Massachusetts night pressed against the windows, and the moon, half-remembered and pale, held a kind of judgment I respected. I sat, hands folded, napkin clean now, waiting for the knock that meant the next part of my life had started. By morning, the dried blood at my temple had turned a dusky purple. The sun came through the lace curtains, too clean for what the house had witnessed. At precisely 7:30, a knock. "Detective Davis." "Mom, we got your call." He was tall, gray at the temples, polite in that New England way, firm without intrusion. I showed him the dining room first, the glass fragments now sealed in a plastic bag, small numbered labels I'd written on sticky notes during the night. Old habits die last. "Assault with injury," he murmured while jotting. "Do you know the assailant?" "My daughter-in-law, Sloan Parker, 32, lives here with my son temporarily." I could hear their footsteps upstairs, a creak on the landing, the sound of people realizing consequences have arrived. He took photos, asked routine questions.
When he finished, he looked at me the way officers sometimes do with retired judges, respect tinted by discomfort. "Do you want to file this formally?" Before I could answer, voices from the stairs. "Mom, what's going on?" Evan's hair was a mess of sleep and worry. Behind him, Sloan descended, robe tied too tight, eyes narrow and alert. Her gaze landed on the officer, then on my temple. "You called the police." "I did." My tone was flat. "Because you assaulted me." Sloan laughed, a short, cutting sound. "Oh, please. I tossed a glass. It slipped. You're making this a spectacle." Officer Davis said carefully. "We need a statement from both of you." Evan stepped between us. "Mom, she didn't mean it. She was drunk." I cut him off. "Being intoxicated doesn't erase impact, only memory." That stopped him cold. The courtroom cadence still worked. Sloan crossed her arms. "You think you can ruin our lives because you're bored and lonely?" The officer glanced at me, waiting. I nodded. "I'll be pressing charges." For a heartbeat, something mean flickered behind her eyes. Then she turned away, muttering, "You'll regret this." "Mrs. Parker," Davis said, "I'm asking you to step outside while I finish the report." When the door closed behind them, Evan's voice cracked. "You didn't have to call the cops, Mom." "I didn't have to," I agreed softly, "but I chose to. She crossed a line, and I won't pretend she didn't." He rubbed his face, exhaustion and disbelief mixing. "She's my wife, and I'm your mother, and this," I gestured at the evidence bag, "is my home." He didn't answer. The patrol car's engine rumbled outside. Sloane's silhouette passed by the window, her chin high, a flash of defiance even as the officer opened the back door. Evan watched from the porch until the taillights disappeared. Then he turned and went upstairs without a word, the sound of the bedroom door closing like a verdict. That evening, the house felt hollow in a new way. Not peaceful, just emptied of noise. I brewed tea I couldn't taste and sat at my desk. The cursor blinked on the screen of a fresh document, inside a folder labeled K. Sloan. I wrote what every judge learns early, first feelings later. Date, time, location. Witness, Evan Miles. Injury, laceration to right temple. Object, stemmed wine glass, crystal shattered. Intent, verbal aggression escalating to assault. When I finished, I stared at the header and whispered the sentence I'd told 100 defendants in my court. Actions have consequences, Mrs. Parker, even at home. Outside, the first snow of the season began to fall, soft, soundless, inevitable. The following morning, the bruise on my temple had turned the color of storm clouds. I iced it while watching the snow gather on the porch railing. By noon, the house had stopped feeling like a home and started feeling like evidence storage. That was when I called Frank Dalton, retired detective, my friend for 30 decades. He was one of the few men who still called me Judge Miles, even after I left the bench. When I told him what happened, he didn't interrupt. He only said, "Send me her full name, date of birth, and whatever you've got on her." His voice was steady, the same tone we used back when testimonies started to sound like lies. 2 days passed. Evan stayed in his room, mostly silent, leaving only to grab coffee or feed the cat. He couldn't look at me long. Guilt is that. It hides in plain sight. On the 3rd day, my phone rang. "Maggie," Frank said, still using the nickname from our courthouse days. "You might want to sit down." I opened my notebook. "Go ahead." "She's been out of work for months, sired in August. She told people she left voluntarily." I felt the first drop of something heavier than anger. "Evan thinks she still has that marketing job." "She doesn't," he said, "and she's been busy." I could hear the rustle of papers through the line. "She's got 5 credit cards, all maxed out. 2 are in Evan's name. There are also 3 large withdrawals from his retirement account, 400,000 total." My pen froze. She would have needed his login or a forged signature. "That's not all," Frank continued. "We found social media messages, a private group chat with a few old friends. She called you the old lady with the golden house and said, quote, 'Once she's gone, we'll finally be free.'" For a long moment, all I heard was the hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen. Frank's voice softened. "I'm sorry, Veronica, but this isn't just bad behavior, it's predatory." "I know what it is," I said quietly. "It's a pattern." After we hung up, I printed everything and placed it into a new section of the folder: financial evidence, dates, screenshots, statements. That night, I made soup. Neither of us ate. Evan came downstairs, his face gray from lack of sleep. "Mom, I'm going to talk to her tomorrow," he said. "She's staying at her friend's place downtown. I think if we just—" "Evan," I stopped him. "Before you talk, you need to see something." I slid a single page across the table, the bank statement showing the withdrawals.
He stared at it, blinking. "This can't be right." "It is," I said softly. "I verified it." He shook his head. "She wouldn't either, and she's done it before to other people." He looked at me then, searching for something to hold on to. "What are you going to do?" he asked. "The question," I said, "is what we are both going to do." When he went back upstairs, I sat in the darkened kitchen, hands around the cooling mug. I'd spent a career listening to victims say, "I never saw it coming," but you always do. You just don't name it until it hurts. On my desk, under the glow of the lamp, the folder, K.S. Sloan, had grown thick. I opened it one more time and wrote a new note at the top: pattern of deception, escalating risk. Motive, financial gain. Risk, emotional manipulation of dependent spouse. Then I closed the file, leaned back, and whispered to the quiet house. Court is in session. The courthouse smelled the same as it did when I left it. Polished floors, old paper, nervous perfume. Except this time, I wasn't presiding. I was testifying. Sloan sat at the defense table, arms crossed, hair perfectly blown out as if presentation could rewrite truth. Her lawyer, barely 30, kept glancing between us like he was walking into crossfire. Evan sat in the back row, his eyes fixed on the floor. When the judge asked for my statement, I stood with the same posture I used to deliver sentences. "I'm not seeking revenge," I said evenly, "only protection. The assault happened in my home at my own table by someone I sheltered. I requested a temporary restraining order, 90 days, no contact, no entry to my residence." The judge granted it. Sloane's expression cracked for the first time. Just a flicker of panic, quickly swallowed by rage. Her lawyer protested, but the judge's gavel ended the argument. As I left, I saw Evan's face, conflicted, pale, lost. 2 days later, my phone rang. Evan's number. "Can we talk?" he asked quietly. We met at a small cafe on Main Street, the kind with fogged windows and chipped mugs. He looked thinner, like guilt had been eating what food couldn't. We sat in silence until I placed a folder on the table: Frank's report, the bank statements, the screenshots. "Evan," I began gently, "there are things you need to see before you make any decision." He hesitated, then opened it. I watched his face as he read. Confusion first, then disbelief, then something like grief. She emptied my retirement." His voice cracked on the last word. I nodded. $400,000 without authorization. He flipped through the next pages: credit cards, bills, messages. Each sheet seemed to drain another shade from his face. Finally, he whispered, "This can't be her." "Denial," I said softly, "is the body's last attempt at comfort." He pushed the papers away and rubbed his eyes. "I thought she was just stressed. I thought I wasn't doing enough." I reached across the table and touched his wrist. "Evan, look at me." He did, and I saw fear there, raw and new. "Has she ever hurt you?" I asked. He froze. Then slowly, he pulled the collar of his shirt down. Yellow bruises ringed the base of his neck. Fingerprints fading, but undeniable. My chest tightened. "When?" "After the hearing," he whispered. "She said I humiliated her. She lost control." I swallowed hard, every instinct in me screaming to protect, not prosecute. "You're coming home," I said quietly. "Tonight. Right now." "She'll lose it," he murmured. "She already has." That night, he packed what he could and drove back with me. When we entered the house, the air felt heavier, but different, like the weight of truth had replaced the weight of fear. I showed him his old room, unchanged since college, books still on the shelf, a framed photo of his first clinic day. He stood in the doorway for a long time.
"I didn't think I'd ever come back," he said. "Then let this be where you start again." Later, I lay awake listening to the quiet rhythm of his breathing in the next room. For the first time in months, it wasn't the silence of tension, it was the silence of safety. And in that fragile stillness, I allowed myself to feel something I hadn't since the night of the glass: relief. The snow had melted into a hard frost that crackled beneath my boots when I went out for the mail. 3 weeks had passed since the restraining order. Evan had begun to look like himself again, sleeping through the night, laughing softly when the cat knocked over his coffee mug. Healing, I thought, is a sound you can hear. Then, one night, it happened. It was almost 10 o'clock. We were watching an old movie when the doorbell rang once, twice, then rapid, angry pounding. Evan's eyes widened. "It's her." I stood, motioning for him to stay behind me. Through the frosted glass of the front door, I could see her shape. Sloan, hair wild, coat half open, rage steaming off her. "Evan," she screamed, "open this damn door. You can't hide behind her forever." The pounding grew louder. I picked up my phone, steady as ever. 911, I said when the dispatcher answered. "This is Veronica Miles. A woman subject to a restraining order is attempting to enter my home." Sloan kept shouting, "You ruined my life, Veronica. I hope you're proud of yourself." Evan's hands trembled, but I placed mine over his. "She can't hurt us now." In the distance, sirens began to wail. When the patrol car pulled up, red and blue lights flashing through the living room curtains, Sloan turned on them, screaming, "This is my husband's house. She's manipulating everything." The officers moved quickly. One spoke to her, the other approached our door. "Mrs. Miles, please stay inside," he said calmly. "We've got it from here." We watched through the window as they handcuffed her on the porch. Even then, she twisted towards us, voice rising. "Evan, don't let them do this. I love you." But Evan didn't move. He just whispered, "No, you don't," and turned away. After they drove off, the house fell silent again. He collapsed onto the sofa, hands covering his face. "It's over, right?" "Not yet," I said, "but we're getting there." The next morning, I met Frank at his office downtown. He was waiting with the manila folder, thicker than before. "You'd better see this." Inside were police reports from Atlanta and Dallas, both with the same name, Sloan Parker. Domestic assault, credit card fraud, out-of-court settlements. "She's done this before," Frank said grimly. "Different cities, same pattern. Finds someone stable, drains them dry, then burns everything down." I stared at the papers, the pattern crystal clear. "This isn't a marriage," I said quietly. "It's a strategy." Frank nodded. "And you just disrupted it." On the drive home, the winter light filtered through bare trees, sharpened silver. For the first time in months, I felt something close to satisfaction. Not joy, not triumph, just the clean stillness that comes when truth finally stands up straight. That evening, I found Evan in the kitchen making dinner. He looked up and smiled faintly. "We'll get through this, won't we?" "Yes," I said.
We will. And next time she stands in front of a judge, it won't be me defending her. It'll be the law itself. The courthouse looked softer in spring light, as if winter had been scrubbed off the walls. Evan and I sat side by side, this time not as witness and defendant, but as survivors. Sloan entered in handcuffs, orange jumpsuit stark against her pale skin. Her once polished poise had dissolved into something smaller, sharper. The judge reviewed the plea deal: 2 years in prison, 3 years probation, full restitution, and a permanent no-contact order. When asked if she understood, Sloane's voice cracked. "Yes, Your Honor." She turned once, searching for Evan's face. He didn't look away, but he didn't speak either. That silence, measured, steady, was the closure no verdict could give. As she was let out, the sound of the door locking behind her echoed down the hall. I felt no triumph, only gravity. Justice is never victory, its balance restored. In the weeks that followed, Evan started therapy twice a week. He learned to name things I'd spent my life sentencing: manipulation, isolation, coercion, And little by little, he began to live again. He painted his old room a calm blue, the color, he said, of breathing. We rebuilt quietly. Dinners turned from silent to comfortable. Some nights he'd read while I gardened, both of us reclaiming peace, one ordinary moment at a time. 3 months later, he was invited to speak at a state conference on financial and emotional abuse. The night before, he paced the living room, nervous. "What if I freeze?" he asked. "Then you paused," I told him. "Justice isn't about perfection, it's about truth." The next day, I sat in the front row and watched him walk on stage in a navy suit. He began simply, "My name is Evan Miles, and a broken wine glass saved my life." For 40 minutes, he spoke about shame, about control, about the quiet ways abuse hides behind love. When he finished, the room rose to its feet. Afterward, a woman from a nonprofit approached him with an offer to fund a program helping victims of financial coercion. As we left the auditorium, his eyes shone, not from tears, but from purpose. "Mom," he said, "we can actually help people." That night, I sat alone on the porch with a cup of tea. The air was still, the garden smelled of rain, and for the first time since that night, the house felt light again. The glass she threw had shattered more than crystal. It had broken the illusion that love excuses cruelty. From the fragments, we built something stronger: awareness, courage, and peace. I looked up at the stars and smiled. "Court adjourned," I whispered. "Case closed." And if this story reached you, if it reminded you that silence is never safety, then don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Your story might just be the next verdict someone needs to hear.